A social media influencer vanishes while on a trip to Nigeria. All she leaves behind is a cryptic message to her thousands of followers. She's been abducted, and the kidnappers are asking for $1 million in ransom. But everything is not as it seems.
I was just bored and having fun, just getting a laugh.
Just in case you missed what she said, here it is once again. Influencer Woah Vicky says she faked her own kidnapping because she was bored and says she wanted a laugh.
Sometimes, you want to have a little fun. The Bible says laughter is good for the soul. Sometimes I be wanting to laugh. And this is how I find that funny.
In case you're unfamiliar with Woah Vicky and her chaotic energy, I'll give you some background. Her real name is Victoria Rose Waldrop. She's 24 years old and is originally from Atlanta. She rose to fame as a social media influencer, and to be fair, she does have the followers. 1 million on YouTube, 3.7 million on Instagram, and more than 7 million on TikTok. She's known mostly under the name Woah Vicky. Her rise to fame came back in 2017 when she used the N-word in several of her videos and claimed to be black. She's since been called out for blackfishing from major celebrities like Snoop Dogg because she claims to be black, but she's actually white.
Yes, my birthday is March 7th, but July 19th was the day I found out I was black. Like my whole entire life. My mom kept telling me, you're white, you're white. I never believed her because I knew I was black.
So she's clearly been controversial in the past, but has somehow still managed to maintain that pretty large following. And recently, she made another questionable move. She told her millions of followers that she'd been kidnapped. The message was posted on her Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. It was posted on December 29th and read, quote, "I have kidnapped Vicky. She is with me in Nigeria. I'm demanding $1 million for her release." So right away, her followers are getting nervous. They believe Vicky has actually been abducted overseas, which if it were true would be a very serious matter. But pretty quickly, Vicky actually fesses up, saying she made up this entire thing because she was, quote, bored and wanted a laugh. I'll let her explain it.
Sorry about that. Everything good, y'all. God bless, God bless. Sorry about that, y'all. It's all love. I love y'all. We love y'all. I was just bored and having fun, just getting a laugh. Just getting a laugh in. That's it. It's all love, though. I was just having fun with my brother. Everything good, though. Everything good. I'm sorry about that. Please forgive me. We kind of got carried away with the joke, We just like to have fun and joke, I don't drink or go to the club, so this is how I find my entertainment. It's probably not the best way to do it. I should probably be like reading the Bible or something like that. But sometimes, you want to have a little fun. The Bible says laughter is good for the soul. Sometimes I be wanting to laugh. And this is how I find that funny. I don't like date really. It's not really much people I could date because of my Christian values. So this is kind of like how I have fun. But, we all struggle in different areas. So, I'm not saying this was the right thing to do, but I take accountability and ownership. I'm sorry for anyone that I harmed in the process, but it's all love.
Vicky made a statement about all of this too. She posted this to Twitter, and here's part of what she wrote, quote, "The prank started with us calling people I know from America. Then my brother from the USA posted it, and it ended up on blogs. Afterward, my brother from the USA suggested I make a tweet to keep it going, saying it was a good prank and that father was a great actor. He even mentioned we could make money by creating cryptocurrency based on the prank. Father and I agreed, but in hindsight, it was a terrible idea. We weren't thinking at all. It quickly became clear how bad this was when his friends started calling him concerned. That's when we decided to go live and explain that it was all fake. Those videos you've seen of me trying to explain myself are from that moment. Alright, I know you're multitasking when you're watching our videos, but if you're out running errands, I have something that you might be interested in. It's this free app called Upside, and it gets you cash back on daily essentials. I use Upside every time I pump my gas because it's so easy and it's free. Here's what you do. Download the Upside app and claim an offer for whatever you're buying. So you just pay as usual and then follow the steps on the app to get paid. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside, or scan the QR code on your screen and use our promo code LCNews to get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Right away, Woah Vicky's prank drew parallels to some other infamous kidnapping hoaxes like Sherry Papini or Carly Russell. Sherry's story is a bit more famous, so let's start there. She was out jogging near her home in Redding, California on November 2nd, 2016, when she just disappeared. Sherry was gone for weeks, during which time her disappearance became a media sensation. There were missing posters, candlelight vigils, and a major investigation into her apparent abduction. But then all of a sudden, on November 24th of that year, Sherry just showed up again. She said her captors had let her go. Right away, it sounded a bit off to investigators. They did some more research, and by March 2022, she was charged federally for faking her own kidnapping. For all this, Sherry took a deal, pleading guilty to 1 count of mail fraud and 1 count of making false statements. She was actually sentenced to 18 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release after that. She was also charged $300,000 in restitution to cover costs of the police investigation. A more recent example of a fake hoax is Carly Russell. That's an Alabama woman who claims she was kidnapped in July of 2023. Carly called 911 saying she found a young child alone along the interstate near Hoover, Alabama. When police arrived to this location, they found Carly's car, but Carly herself was missing. She reappeared about 48 hours later, and she told everyone she'd been abducted by a man in a tractor trailer. She said this guy forced her to undress before taking naked photos of her against her will. But days later, Carly eventually fessed up to all of this, saying she made it up and she'd never even been kidnapped. In March of 2024, she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of filing false police reports. She was sentenced to a year of probation, 100 hours of community service, and even slapped with an $18,000 fine. But let's get back to Woah Vicky. I still have a lot of questions about her hoax abduction, so I'm going to bring in retired FBI agent Colin Schmidt. Let's start from the top, Colin. When a report comes in for an abduction, right away, is that taken seriously?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've worked several kidnappings when I was in the FBI, and generally speaking, the abduction or the report of abduction obviously would go a family member, and then local law enforcement, and then when they would call in the FBI because there's an inherent assumption that there's an interstate nexus to every kidnapping. And then at that point, the FBI starts ramping up resources to support law enforcement to find the person that was abducted.
And if this is a real abduction, let's just say that it is, time is of the essence, right? They always say the first 24 hours or first moments after all of this are the most important. So it's really important to get a jump right away.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the sooner law enforcement is brought in, the sooner they can freeze potential areas of evidence, whether it be digital or abduction location or talking to people, because memories are very ephemeral. So they kind of disappear rather quickly, as well as video, as well as, canvassing a neighborhood, everything you can do to find out who may have done this.
You and I have talked about abductions in the past multiple times because unfortunately they do happen. And something we keep going back to is the cell phones, because we all have them with us all the time. They have location, who we talked to, what we were saying. So is that super vital for the person who was abducted to go through their cell phone if they left it behind?
Yes, that's actually the first step. So hopefully they have the law enforcement has access to the phone. They can get into it. Because the phones are getting more and more encrypted and harder to crack. And so once they go in, the first thing they're going to do is look at the text history And then the next step would use some digital forensic tools to kind of rip the history out of that phone to find out maybe geolocations or interactions or even a web history of what they were downloading.
You talked about the web history, and I want to ask about social media because it plays a role in this case. But even hypothetically, we all have our personal Instagram, our Facebook, whatever it is, even if we're not an influencer. Is that something that FBI agents would take a look through, the recent photos we posted or things we were searching?
Absolutely. All of your digital exhaust is going to be reviewed by investigators. And I had worked a reported kidnapping many years ago where the person had recovered themselves and reported they had been kidnapped. And the first thing that we did was we went into their web history, and one of the first searches they made was how to fake your own kidnapping. So obviously, from there, we understood it was a hoax kidnapping, and then we had moved on.
We've heard about a couple hoax kidnappings just generally. I mean, Sherry Papini jumps into my mind, or Carly Russell, a couple of these names that made headlines because they did do this. And you're mentioning your own case that you dealt with. So this does happen. People just fake their own abduction.
Yeah, for a variety of reasons. It's usually from at least that case that we were dealing with from this was a teenager in her, well, she was 19 or 20, and it was a effort of her for attention seeking behavior. She certainly got attention because there was 50 FBI agents out there looking for the suspected kidnapper as well as the law enforcement that was involved, and there was a huge uh, uh, cost of resources while we were undergoing this investigation.
Yeah, it does sound like that person in the case wanted attention. That's also what we saw with Sherry Papini. And I think we could probably say the same for Woah Vicky, this girl who has millions of followers. Obviously, she likes attention of people on TikTok and Instagram. Do you think that's why she did this? She said it was a prank, but do you think she just wanted the attention?
I can't get into her mind, but certainly she's in the media right now. We're talking about it, and from my understanding of influencers, good or bad publicity is what they want. They don't care how it's generated, so they can get more clicks and more people watching and more followers. So from that perspective, it looks like she achieved her objective. She got more attention. The problem for her is that there may be some consequences for what she has done.
Yeah, and to start, she put this out on a tweet and people were believing her. This isn't something you joke about because it's something very serious. So her followers, even friends or family, got nervous. Hey, is something going on? So let's say that this really happened. A high profile person like her who has a huge social media footprint is abducted. Does that make things even more difficult because she's interacting with thousands, millions of people all over the world all the time? So her social media might be harder to comb through.
Well, the social media would be harder, but frankly, she'd be easier to find because there's more witnesses and more people who know what she looks like. So, from that perspective, yeah, there would be a lot more people who would be able to give information to law enforcement to give an idea that they may have seen her on the street, or if the FBI, for example, did a press release and, hey, have you seen this person? And if this person had actually been kidnapped and she's not sitting in a hotel room or a warehouse and she's actually out and about, there's a high probability somebody's going to spot her and report that to law enforcement.
Yeah, that's a good point I didn't think of. If a celebrity or someone who is notable, if we recognize their face, they're obviously going to be easier to spot if they are out and about. So I'm glad you brought that up. My next question with all of this is, she's an American and she said that she was abducted in Nigeria. So that's obviously an international crime here. And if we're thinking like FBI agents thinking, okay, this is real, she really was abducted, does that make things more difficult because she's an American who went missing somewhere else?
Well, it is more difficult because the FBI has no jurisdiction in Nigeria. They would have to work with the local authorities there and to assist in the investigation. The fact that she's an American, if she was actually abducted in Nigeria, the FBI has primary jurisdiction, and they would work with the State Department as well as the local authorities to find this person. And that's why doing something like this, it kicks off a huge process where a lot of very powerful people and powerful organizations start getting involved. And sometimes it's hard to turn that process off. So I don't think obviously she was thinking this through, as well as the fact that she's bringing bad press, so to speak, onto the country of Nigeria, which they had nothing to do with this. This is an influencer trying to achieve some sort of agenda or objective.
I just keep going back to the fact that this is so serious to report. It's why we could get in trouble for calling 911 if there isn't an emergency, because it's a waste of resources. We could be taking those resources from someone who actually is in peril. I just can't get over it. The next part I want to ask about is her tweet itself. She mentioned specifically that there was a ransom, $1 million this person was requesting on her Twitter. Is that something that a true captor, a real abductor would do, reach out for ransom?
Well, they do. They're very rare. Most of the time, when you have an abduction, it's a family member, or a domestic issue between parents over a child. And then when there is a ransom demand, automatically the FBI gets involved, especially a $1 million ransom demand. In terms of what's going on, I'm sure they were kind of taking a step back, because on the face of this, it seemed a little far fetched, and then it obviously came out, what exactly happened. But starting to throw words and things like that around, then you really are kind of kicking over a hornet's nest of resources and governments when you say something like that.
You said it kind of looked far-fetched. This kidnapping, this alleged abduction happened via Twitter. That's when it was kind of announced. So as a retired FBI agent, you're looking at the tweet. Are you worried right away when you see it, thinking it is real, or does it completely look, it's a little fishy?
Well, it came out of nowhere, and from what little I understand about the case, her connection to Nigeria is pretty thin. And the fact is that Nigerians generally don't kidnap Americans, because there has to be some sort of a reason, as well as the fact that it doesn't appear that she had any travel history, and maybe she did, to Nigeria. So just kind of throwing that country out like that, and international kidnappings for ransom are also very rare as well. So just like I said, right on the face, it kind of looked like, frankly, far-fetched. And I think the authorities kind of took a step back and looked at the source and let this develop before they jumped in. I hope they did. Otherwise, it would have been a huge resource draw.
And I think that's the case because we haven't heard about widespread searches or the FBI with boots on the ground. I think you're right that it was kind of, she announced that she was safe and well before any of that would have happened. I'm also wondering, you kind of touched on this, but I wanted to circle back. If this tweet came out and she didn't come out right away and say, hey, I'm here, I'm safe, the tweet is out, we think that she's abducted. Is this specific instance one that would be on the FBI's radar?
Well, I don't know for sure. Kind of, once again, I have to get more details. But if they would make some reasonable inquiries, and somebody would have to complain to the FBI, they're not going to go ahead and start an investigation based upon a tweet. It would have to be a family member or somebody that had a role in her life that would come forward. And the FBI is not going to generally start an investigation based upon what's on social media. They're going to want to have somebody come forward like that said, hey, we got a phone call that had a ransom demand in there. We got an email. We got something direct, not something that's kind of blasted out to the entire world.
The through line throughout all of this is that it is a crime to do this, to waste resources. I mean, I personally think it's unethical, but also people have been charged. We mentioned Sherry Papini or Carly Russell. They face charges for false reporting. Do you think in this instance she could face charges? I mean, it was just a tweet and we don't think she called any emergency responders, but could she face charges?
I don't think so, because it was so rapidly, it went up and then it went back down. And if there had been resources that had been expended on this, then I think there would have been some prosecutorial involvement and some investigation on this. But it doesn't appear right now that anybody expended any resources. And frankly, the people who were in charge didn't really take it seriously on its face. That's what it appears. So Should she be charged at this point? Well, I'm not really in a position to say that, but I think she's going to get some consequences from her followers for doing this, because it seemed like, from what I saw on social media, people are pretty irritated by what she did.
Yeah, at least she came forward and said, hey, I'm okay. This was just a joke, and didn't drag it on. But still, you're right. She is getting some backlash. This is just a bizarre case overall. Colin, thank you for coming on with us and chatting about it, though.
All right, great. Happy New Year.
It doesn't seem like Woah Vicky reported her hoax abduction to the authorities, so she probably won't face any charges, but it's definitely a story we'll keep an eye on. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.